As an overview, what I'm going to do in this first session is give you the history and some comparisons between electronic sow feeding stations that we have in some herds that we service, and compare that the best we can to what we call open pen alternative, which are small group systems, and we'll try to compare them on several different fronts. We'll look at the advantages, disadvantages, at least as we see today, and then we'll summarize just a little bit of background in terms of when we think about group housing. It's a complex issue, and when we look at the studies that have been done to compare production between the systems that we know today, if we compare that to stall housing 100% to group housing, there's contrasting studies with respect to reproductive performance and all of the parameters that have been reported. The other side of that is when we think about going into the future and what awaits us, driven by maybe our European counterparts, our producers have concerns about what is the productivity difference. Can we maintain high productivity in different systems, and how does that roll itself into welfare concerns? And can we distinguish improved or less improvement in welfare between systems? Some of the welfare concerns that come up are, can females lie in full lateral recumbency? That would be both side and then front to back without their head in a trough. Do stalls limit socialization? Do they actually have a benefit and reduce skin lesions? As we think about group housing then, a lot of us remember the groups we used to have in some facilities in the 70s and 80s. And so the questions still remain. What about the aggression at mixing? What about the aggression at feeding time? Are facilities that must be available as we look at these systems for those animals, that percentage of animals that do not fit into that group, either because of body condition or because of lameness or structural challenges? And then practically, how do we remove the recycle return sows? What's that do to that group integrity? What's it do to the efficiency of the system? And how do we handle those individuals? The data would suggest, what data is available, that if animals are handled in the manner that we expect they'd be handled, both group pen and stall similarities have similar pregnancy rates, similar embryo survivability, similar total-born, live-born, but may have several reports greater litter birth weights. A couple of slides on the European, just to set the stage for us. In the EU, it's required that they have a minimum unobstructed floor space of 2.5 square meters per sow in groups of 5 or less, 2.25 square meters for groups between 6 and 39. And in parentheses, I put in the facilities that I'm going to describe that we work with. Those facilities are at 18.4 square feet. And so when you compare the European requirements to the facility requirements that we have in place, the European requirements at 2.25 would be 29% greater space. In groups of 40 or more, that requirement is 2.025 square meters, so that represents 16% higher space than what we have in the facilities that I'm going to describe. The background in the facilities that I'm going to describe is the constraints that we had is that we wanted some type of open group housing. We wanted to keep it in the same footprint as the comparative facility that we would put stalls in order to be able to have a cost-competitive system. And it's important to know that these requirements are not yet in the United States, but I think as we look ahead, we would say that some of those may be coming forth. Required for the EU, existing accommodations for pregnancy must conform to the same rules in January of 2013. new dry sow housing must have all pregnant sows and gilts in groups from 4 weeks after mating until 1 week before farrowing. Sows must have permanent access to manipulable material. They must have access to high fiber feed, and sick or injured individual animals must be in a turnaround or a free pen themselves. So again, difference than what we see here in the U.S., but maybe giving us some idea as we look into the future. What I'm going to spend then is the group housing or pen housing, talk a little bit about either the open stall or electronic sow feeding stations. The three types of ESF stations that we work with are Nedap, Shower, and Osborne. The open, what I call small group housing, is open pens of AP hog slat equipment type design. To date, as I put this in the proceedings, that we really have two different types of flows. We have those that are stalled for 42 days at least by design, and more practically then those sows are stalled through 35 to 37 days because some of those stalls are used for the individual sows that are either thin or have different body condition or have individual requirements. We also service about half of the style that put sows into the pens immediately after service by day 7. The feeder stations accommodate between 50 to 65 sows depending on the company. As I mentioned, the facilities are designed at 18.4 square feet per female. That utilizes the alleyways that we would have had in a normal stall system and kept it within the same footprint of the buildings. Free-stall open pens typically stalled for the same amount of time, so 42 days longest, practically 35 to 37 days. Conditioned by, or grouped by body condition, pens of 10, same square footage, 18.4. One of the things that we have continued to drive is that we're either going to group sows immediately after service or we're going to group them at 35 plus days of pregnancy. The other discussion point is that in an ESF or a larger group system, is it a static or a dynamic group? We've tended to keep groups static, but we do work with some dynamic groups. The differentiation between those are that static, the group is constant throughout gestation. They, in theory, have a stable social order. The physical group itself remains intact. The disadvantage, as we all know, is that no group is stable. Even after day 35 of pregnancy, we're still going to have individual removals, again, either because of varying body condition or because of lameness or a treatable sow. And clearly then that results in underutilization, either of the space or the station. And there's ways that we can talk about at the end about how to work around that. The dynamic groups that some use, our experience there has typically been on sow herds less than 1,200 sows. Those groups are not constant throughout gestation. Animals are continually added, continually removed as they enter from the breeding group, exit into the farrowing. The breed group may be spread across numerous pens. It clearly allows for more than one feeder per pen, and so you have a backup, at least in the feeder system. And several reports are that it's harder for a dominant sow to guard and protect that feeder, even though a number of studies would say that sows will typically go back through the same feeder time and time again with multiple feeders within the pen. The benefits prevents social stress, or at least reduces that, would optimize and does optimize space and feeder utilization. Disadvantage, one that still concerns us, the breed group integrity is lost. So for that means that we have to have higher skilled people to identify recycles. We're going to be recycle checking through very large groups, and so the skill of the person there to run bores consistently 7 days a week becomes quite critical. You have to have total faith in the computer, and so each day you can look and see these sows are in the recycle window. You can go out and try to find those, but still you have to have faith in the system. You got to know how to read the computer, read the reports. Importantly as well, that by itself still requires that the animal caretaker must be an individual animal caretaker. Simply means that if the individual person there is going to look at the dynamic group as a whole, it's going to be quite disappointing. I want to report on two different farms then. One is Farm High Power. This is just a general overview of that farm. It is a 6,000 sow farm. Weaned first pigs in October 2008. Farrowing rooms, 20 farrowing rooms of 56 crates. Lactation length or wean age 21 days. Gestation barns, 1 ESF per 56 sows. Just the outlook or the overview blueprint of this, set up as gilt developer, gilt isolation, continuous flow gilt developer, B&G 1, farrowing B&G 2. One of the things you can see, so these represent the stalls. These represent then the pens that you immediately have some flow challenges because you don't have equal distribution between crates and pens in each of these barns, but it's not enough if you put them all in one barn, and so your distribution and you have some animal movement activity that certainly has to be just addressed. This happens to be a Nedap system station, and again, there's one of these in a single station in each pen. Pens are loaded with 56 animals per station within somewhere between 35 and 37 days post-insemination. Up until that point, they are stalled. They're also stalled from wean to the first week of insemination as well. The system has functioned quite well. You can see that if we had to recreate this farm today, I think we would put 2 stations, so we would put 112 females per section of barn or per pen rather than a single station per pen. This particular style has the ability to feed 2 different diets, and so part of our research is going to look at and is in the process of looking at stage of pregnancy, whether there is differences in protein amino acid needs, and clearly you can do that within the same cohorts within individual pens. It functions by a Palm Pilot and an electronic ear reader, and that's worked and functioned quite well. There's a number of electronic ear tags. We have found retention to be about 97% in that farm to date. It is important, depending on what station you have. This particular one, the tag has to be put in the left ear. When it's put in the right ear, the accuracy of reading or the detectability of that tag declines, and so you immediately know that you've got to remove and change those tags. In the ESF station, you have to write a very detailed protocol of training, and I'm going to go through just a few of those steps. And so we have a preparation step, a training step, and then follow-up. So in preparation is the planning, the electronic IDs, the technical setup, get the settings set up in the Velo software system, and then start the training process of moving the sows through the stations. And I'll go into a little more detail because it really starts with gilts and then carries all the way through. Afterwards, it's just a follow-up for being sure that the individual animals are being recorded daily in through the computer, and so it's a simple inventory control, trust the computer. The important first step is in Gilt Training, And when you have a combined system where you have both stalls and ESF, one of the challenges is that you have to train them to both stalls and to ESF stations. If you believe, as we do, that productivity is better if we have a gilt that is stalled at least 10 days prior to insemination, you have to train them then to the stalls, and you also have to train them through to the stations so that when they flow through your system, then they're trained post-service and in an early pregnancy. So one of the constraints that immediately occurs is that we now start servicing gilts at 155 days of age to try to give us a little bit longer window to get all of the gilts trained and then also get them acclimated or adjusted to a stall prior to when we're going to inseminate. So the gilt training stations are the same type of stations as what we have in the gestation barn. There's 2 stations set up in each pen, and then we move them to stalls once they're trained in the training process. We would expect is going to train somewhere around 90% within 7 days after we start a group of gilts, and an additional 7% within the next 3 to 4 days. And we typically see 2 to 3% of the gilts that do not train and continue to go through stations on their own. A very detailed training schedule we found to be quite important, and the assignment of the people on the farm to follow that schedule. So gilts are locked up on every day on one side of the entrance to the station. The doors are opened up for that station. Feed is used as the enticement to get those gilts through the station. Our goal is 95% within 1 week. And we can typically hit that on a group-to-group basis. Just an image happens to be a sow, pregnant group sow going through that particular station and exiting out the other side. Training gilts and sows requires time and patience, so it's important who we pick and who we train to do this daily activity. We do things such as start feeding the animals once a day, several weeks before, included in the group housing, so that when they get back in the station, they're accustomed to that. We use the same feed before and after introduction. We do not train animals from day 0 to day 28 of insemination. We don't train the last 3 weeks of pregnancy. We do not train wean sows, so everything's focused on training of gilts. We found it important to have sufficient light over the feed stations because animals will eat periodically through the 24-hour clock. And we divide the gating between the entrance and exit so that we control the numbers. I mentioned earlier that one of the key things that we were challenged with early on is that the individual people in the barn have got to trust the computer. The computer will tell us which animals eat, which animals don't eat. It does not tell us the volume they eat. So you can still have an individual animal that is under-consuming, and you still need that individual caretaker going through. What are some challenges? It takes more labor and skill to train those young gilts. No problem setting up the groups, no problem setting up the feed curves. We break the sow populations into light, medium, and heavy. We can change the groups based on feed curves based on the stage of production. We can change it based on body condition, and all of that has functioned quite well. You need the same skill of evaluating the status of those animals at each stage of pregnancy to adjust that. We've noticed that aggression occurs when the sows are first moved into pens, and so it doesn't make any difference whether we do them at 35 days or we do them at 40 days. There's about a 4 to 6 hour time period where there's a lot of activity, and then things settle down. They establish their social order. When we group into pens of 56, we do group by parity. What we found the first flow through is that we had some late-term pregnancy fallouts that were higher than what we expected. So now parity 1s and parity 2s are grouped together, and older parities then are mixed. We know that if we don't get that training right, we can have some later term fallout than what we're used to in stalls. When sows are moved back through, it's important that the first time that grouping occurs, even though they've been previously trained, the barn people have to go back through and be sure those animals are actually going through the station on a regular basis. A small percentage, as I mentioned, do not use the system, but it's been around 3%, so very doable for us. It does require skilled labor, and it does require somebody that's paying attention to body conditions. The key thing here is that non-eaters are not visually obvious. As I mentioned, the computer will tell us that the animal didn't enter. The computer doesn't know of the 4 pounds per day how much feed that individual animal is actually consumed. Now I want to flip-flop in a couple then on the open pen situation, which you can see this is a different size herd. It's an 1,800 sow herd. We've got 2,500 sow herd as well. That happens to be 40% crate, 60% pen, Newsom genetics. This is the layout of the blueprint, so it's different than the previous farm. Stalls on one side, open pens of 10 then on the other 60% of the barn. But the flow of animals is the same. The stalls are traditional 23 inch by 7 foot. Pens are roughly just under 11 feet by 19 feet 2 inches, and so provides, depending on where the pen is, somewhere between really 18.4 and about 21 square feet. Largest pens are pens of 10. We have some fallback pens, smaller pens right on the end of the barn. But more importantly, we utilize part of those stalls for the individual fallbacks. So this is a image inside. These strictly are, and I should have mentioned the other farm is total slats, so no bedding. Total slats here, a concrete pad in front. I think I've got a image here. See right here, the feed drops down in these short stalls in the front of that concrete pad. Again, each pen holds 10 animals. We've done a lot of marking there. The animals do not eat in the same stall every day. They're free to come in and out of that stall. And so we do get some movement around with aggressive eaters eating for 30 seconds or 45 seconds. One way that that's been approached, this particular farm actually feeds 3 times a day, and that's been quite good in order to maintain low variability in body condition. Cup waters, you can see there in the corner, and then we do have nipple waters on the wean sow row, but that's irrespective of this. We actually have that on the other farm as well, because we're trying to optimize feed intake in that wean sow. Another view, you can see the open pens here just lined up in a row. You can see the feed being dropped there on the pad again 3 times a day. On a more recent farm that was constructed about 9 months after this, one thing that we did do, because as I mentioned, when you remove an animal, you now have underutilization of the pens, and we don't put another animal in there. So we've actually work a ratio of 9 head and 10 head pens, so that as we group, we can move them down and interchange the two to better utilize pens. Just a couple then comments here as I finish in terms of productivity. What I did was compare equal-sized farms and a similar farm, similar genetics, that started up about 3 months prior to the ESF farm called High Power. These 2 farms are both 6,000 sow farms. When I look at farrowing rate for the previous 26 weeks, you can see that our ESF farm had a lower farrowing rate during the startup. A lot of that was due to our lack of experience and how we stocked that farm. Unfortunately, sometimes Tom Stein said the health overrules or as the king. When we stock those farms, we fill the entire barn, gestation barn, just as quickly as we can. And so in a stall system, that's not much of a challenge, except some of them can get out underneath the gates. In an ESF system, you're now training 24 to 2,500 animals through those stations in a very quick order. And so the dynamics there of getting that done and getting them all trained takes some pre-preparation and some experience. The other farm, which is 100% stall farm, same genetics, same source, 91% feral rate. The recent 26 weeks is more experience occurs. You can see farrowing rate coming up, still not to target, 82.4, 92 here in the sister farm. Last 26 weeks, 84%, 91. The last 4 weeks, both of those farms are at 91. A question we would have is, what about sow mortality? These herds are just now approaching, these two comparable herds are just now approaching maturity in terms of average parity of 3.6. And we're slightly better in the ESF group system than we are in the stall system. However, the stall system had a very active ileitis activity in it about 6 months ago, and when I take that spike out of there, they would be very similar. When we look at reasons of removal, to date we've not seen any difference, even though in the when we look at lameness and we look at foot and leg problems, we haven't seen any difference. We do see a spike right after those animals are mixed in the ESF station, again due to the group housing for 2 to 4 days. We'll see some higher removals compared to the other. When we look at productivity, we'd say today, if we look at the most recent 8 weeks, productivity is the same between those herds. So again, this is a 6,000 sow group housing. This is a 6,000 sow 100% stalled. You can see the startup slowness that we had, and you can see where we're at today. So what about advantages? Well, clearly we can feed in an ESF system, we can feed sows individually in a group environment. And I talked about what we're doing in terms of some research that's ongoing. We can feed those sows by the curve, day of pregnancy. We can estimate daily feed usages. At least in the literature, there's reported lower feed usage in group versus stalls, and we've not been able, grossly have not been able to see that yet. We look at it every month on a rolling average, and we'll continue to look at that as these two sows or these two herds enter the same level of maturity. We can clearly feed two different diets, and we can segregate by parity. What about the small pen? It's a very simple system to run. And so key difference that I mentioned is there's a different skill level that's required in at least to run the ESF versus the small pen. It's very easy to tell a person on that pen system, you've got 80 animals that are going to should be pregnant at day 35. You got 8 pens of 10 to fill, and you look at them by body condition and parity, and you're generally going to get it right. We found a more similar to stall system and a much shorter learning curve. The disadvantages we actually have when we've looked at it, vulvar biting is worse in our small stall pen, open pen system compared to ESF, and I think the difference there is you just got more activity day to day that doesn't occur in the larger open pen ESF system. Body condition variability, we manage that quite well so far by grouping and feeding 3 times a day. So in summary, as we look forward, we're getting the comfort feel that we can use ESF systems in quite large sow herds. We know the learning curve and the detail that it takes to get startup and to then maintain productivity. We're going to continue to look because we expect that we would hope that there would be a difference in mortality between the two systems. You can see we haven't seen that yet today. When we make a decision today on whether it's ESF or small pens, it's going to be the commitment of the individual producer to get the skill level. when we looked about a month and a half ago at cost, the ESF system today, because of some of the exchange rates, could be put in for actually less money than our open pen, small pen design. So there's still some questions that I think we have to look at, because the dynamics of running both a stall and a either open pen system creates some flow challenges that we have to manage around. So the big question for us is to further investigate, do we really need to stall the first 42 days of pregnancy? Can we get equal productivity? Are dynamic groups as productive as static groups? And then 10 may not be the right ideal size. So what's a better group size? I'd like to acknowledge the research group within the Carthage group. That's the Innovative Swine Solutions, headed up by Dr. Laura Greiner. She does all the oversees the studies. In the ESF, the Nedap company, and then in the small open pen, AP and Hog Slap.